What if I told you that 70% of a massive $2.4 trillion budget bill would go straight to the wealthiest 1% of Americans, while you'd get just 72 cents per day if you earn under $50,000? In the next 10 minutes, you'll discover exactly how this controversial budget bill could impact your taxes, healthcare, and financial future. Plus, the shocking truth about who really benefits from these so-called tax cuts for all Americans. Welcome to Financial Area, where we break down complex financial policies so you can make informed decisions about your money. If you want to stay ahead of changes that could affect your wallet, hit that like button and subscribe for weekly financial insights you won't find anywhere else. Right now, Congress is racing against time to pass what some politicians are calling the Big Beautiful Bill, a reconciliation package that must be approved by July 1st. But here's what they're not telling you. This isn't just any ordinary piece of legislation. This bill is designed to take the tax cuts that were first enacted in 2017 and make them permanent. And when I say permanent, I mean forever. No expiration dates, no revisiting the issue, just locked-in tax benefits that will reshape America's economic landscape for generations to come. But here's where it gets really interesting. This bill is projected to add $2.4 trillion to our national debt over the next decade. That's trillion with a T. To put that in perspective, that's more money than most countries' entire economic output for multiple years combined. So you might be wondering, if we're spending this much money on tax cuts, surely everyone must be getting a fair share, right? Well, that's where the story takes a very different turn. Let me break down the numbers for you, because they're absolutely staggering. According to recent analysis, approximately 70% of these tax cuts, that's 7 out of every $10, will go directly to the wealthiest 1% of Americans. These are people who are already millionaires and billionaires, people who frankly don't need additional tax relief to pay their bills or put food on the table. Now, what does this mean for regular working Americans? If you're earning less than $50,000 per year, and that describes millions of hardworking Americans, your daily benefit from this massive tax cut package amounts to just 72 cents. 72 cents. That's less than the cost of a candy bar. Meanwhile, millionaires are set to receive an average of $89,000 annually in tax savings. Think about that for a moment. While you're getting enough to maybe buy a cup of coffee once a week, millionaires are getting the equivalent of a full-time salary just in tax savings. This isn't just unfair. It's a complete reversal of what most people think tax policies should accomplish. Most Americans believe that tax relief should primarily help working families, small business owners, and people who are struggling to make ends meet. Instead, we're seeing a system that takes public resources and funnels them directly to those who need them least. But the inequality doesn't stop there. There's another layer to this story that makes it even more problematic. Many of the tax benefits that are designed for middle-class and working families are temporary, while the benefits for the wealthy are permanent. Let me explain what this means in practical terms. The bill includes several provisions that sound great on paper: an expanded child tax credit to help families with kids, tax exemptions on tips for service workers, tax exemptions on overtime, pay for people working extra hours, and a $6,000 tax deduction for seniors. These all sound like fantastic policies that would genuinely help regular Americans. But here's the catch. Every single one of these provisions expires after just 3 years. So imagine this scenario. You're a working parent who benefits from the expanded child tax credit, or you're a server who no longer has to pay taxes on your tips, or you're working overtime to support your family and finally getting a break on those extra earnings. For 3 years, you experience real financial relief. Then, suddenly, it all disappears. Your taxes go back up, your take-home pay goes down, and you're right back where you started, or possibly worse off due to inflation and rising costs of living. Meanwhile, the tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires continue indefinitely. There's no expiration date, no sunset clause, no requirement to revisit whether these cuts are still justified. This creates a two-tiered system where temporary help for working families is used to justify permanent wealth transfers to the already wealthy. This approach raises serious questions about priorities and fairness. If temporary measures are necessary due to budget constraints, why wouldn't they apply equally to all income levels? Why should a family struggling to pay for childcare lose their tax credit after 3 years? while a millionaire keeps their tax break forever. Now, the impact of this budget bill extends far beyond just tax policy. We need to talk about what this means for healthcare and the social programs that millions of Americans depend on. The numbers here are even more alarming than the tax distribution. According to recent analysis, the House version of this bill would result in 16 million Americans losing their health insurance. Let me repeat that. 16 million people would lose their health coverage. That's like the entire population of Pennsylvania suddenly becoming uninsured. These losses would primarily come from deep cuts to Medicaid, the program that provides health care to low-income families, disabled individuals, and seniors in nursing homes. The Senate version of the bill is expected to be even more severe, though the exact numbers are still being calculated. We're talking about potentially the largest reduction in healthcare coverage since the creation of Medicaid itself. This comes at a time when healthcare costs are already rising faster than wages, when many Americans are already struggling to afford prescription medications, and when medical bankruptcy remains one of the leading causes of personal financial ruin. Think about what this means in human terms. These aren't just statistics, these are real people. Working parents who depend on Medicaid to cover their children's doctor visits. Seniors who rely on Medicaid to help pay for nursing home care that can cost $100,000 per year or more. Disabled individuals who need Medicaid to cover essential medications and treatments. When we cut these programs, we're not just affecting government budgets, we're potentially destroying lives and families. The Congressional Budget Office recently released an analysis showing that this bill would actually have a negative impact on the overall economy. This means that not only are we cutting health care for millions of people and adding trillions to the debt, but we're also potentially slowing economic growth in the process. It's hard to imagine a worse combination of outcomes. Meanwhile, Social Security, the program that provides retirement income for millions of seniors, continues to face long-term solvency challenges that lawmakers are simply ignoring. Everyone knows that Social Security needs reforms to ensure it can continue paying full benefits for future generations. But instead of addressing this critical issue, Congress is focused on passing tax cuts that primarily benefit people who don't even need Social Security to survive in retirement. This misplacement of priorities tells us something important about how our political system works. There's apparently unlimited political will to pass tax cuts for the wealthy, but no appetite for the hard work of ensuring that working Americans can retire with dignity. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger financial picture, because the implications of this budget bill extend far beyond any single policy area. We're talking about fundamental questions of fiscal responsibility, national debt, and economic stability that will affect every American for decades to come. The $2.4 trillion that this bill would add to the national debt doesn't exist in a vacuum. This comes on top of a national debt that's already over $30 trillion and growing every year. To put this in context, every American's share of the national debt is already over $90,000, and that's before we add another $2.4 trillion to the pile. But here's what makes this even more concerning. Congress is simultaneously working to raise the debt ceiling. The House has already passed a bill to raise it by $4 trillion, while the Senate is pushing for an even higher increase of $5 trillion. Think of the debt ceiling like the credit limit on a credit card. When the government spends more than it takes in through taxes and other revenue, it has to borrow money to cover the difference. Raising the debt ceiling allows for additional borrowing. In normal circumstances, you might raise a debt ceiling because you have a plan to increase your income or reduce your spending. But what we're seeing here is the opposite. We're raising the debt ceiling specifically so we can afford to give tax cuts that will reduce government revenue even further. It's like increasing your credit card limit so you can afford to quit your job. This pattern of fiscal irresponsibility isn't limited to one political party. Both Republicans and Democrats have contributed to the growth of the national debt when it serves their political objectives. Republicans tend to favor tax cuts that reduce revenue, while Democrats often support spending increases for social programs. The problem is that neither side is willing to have an honest conversation about the trade-offs involved.